Ego is lonely. Either way it goes, ego ends up terrified of being unimportant, unnecessary, not in control, um, not running the show. Um, so I want to briefly describe a little bit about what do we mean by ego. Everybody, oh, he's got such a big ego, or she doesn't have any ego at all, or their egos clash, or what have you. And the word gets thrown around as though people know what they're talking about when it's a very difficult thing to talk about. It's like people using the word God or love, you know, assuming that everybody knows what that is. And a lot of times we don't. Um, we just accept that perhaps when I use the word love, that you understand it the way I do, and boy, that just isn't the case a lot of times. So there's two aspects, and I want to briefly talk about kind of the psychological aspect, but we're not going to really get into that because that's not what we're exploring here. We're looking at the spiritual element of ego, but we have to contrast it first. Ego, in kind of the psychological um, realm, um, is related specifically to the material world. How I relate to you, how I relate to the pillow, the couch, how I relate to the speaker, um, that I'm going to turn back on, um, how I relate to, oh geez, things like politics or things like that. So it's designed to figure out how does this I, and the word ego comes from kind of the metaphysical explorations back in the early 1700s, meaning just this I in relation to the not I, to that out there. So it automatically sets up a me here, that there separateness. Um, so the the importance of spirituality in terms of looking at ego is that it focuses on what is beyond what the ego perceives, the superficial. The ego looks at, the superficiality. I'm walking up a set of stairs, and it's kind of saying, for my survival, and so that I don't look like an idiot, I'm going to walk up these stairs carefully and not fall down and get hurt. When we look beyond the material of who we've been taught to think and feel that we are, which comprises that sense of self, that sense of ego, that sense of stuffness that we call ourselves. Um, we realize that what makes us us isn't the thoughts and all the things that we've come to think and feel about ourselves. It goes far, far beyond that. Um, it's expansive and spacious. That we are in the midst of a creation that we're just learning how incredibly expansive it really is. So we have so we have this kind of ego that says, well, no, this is it, and it's kind of like that balloon bouncing on the water. Uh, Spiritual awareness pops that bubble and says, no, small ego is also an expression of large ego. Um, so the ego's desire to feel important and in charge or what have you um, prevents us from really seeing our being in the midst of being. That our being is an expression of being. that being is an expression of this being. It's reciprocal. It isn't one causing the other. It's very interactive. But our small self, ego, self-consciousness, those kinds of things, says, no. This is really it. And my sense of who I am, my self-centeredness, my self-belief, my self-concept is all really that there is. And so it narrows our spiritual view into thinking that this is it. Um, that we only exist materially. We identify with that ego and creates that illusion that somehow we are distinct and individual from the rest of creation. So when we're looking at ego for our spiritual growth, and the thing is, for a long time there was this whole notion of, oh, you've got to get rid of your ego, you've got to destroy your ego. Well, that's like saying cutting off your left arm because you're right-handed. Um, you know, it, as we talked about before in previous Zen Times, it's not about getting rid of a part of ourselves. That's setting up that duality, that fight against, oh, I've got a part of me that's no good and I've got to get rid of it. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. It creates a tremendous amount of divisiveness and suffering. So we have this this idea of being able to recognize when ego is important and when it's not. When we're doing spiritual work, the ego is not cut out for that. And that's fine. It's not saying ego's bad or whatever, but it's going to try to intrude. It's going to try to get in there and go, oh, but what about me? What about me? What do you mean you're talking about being in the midst of being, or all these kind of fancy sorts of things? But what about me? What about me? And so it will try to intrude. Just watch it. And as I said several Zen times ago, Sunru Suzuki's statement, your thoughts will come and go. Open the front door, open the back door, let them pass through. Just don't serve them tea. Easier said than done. But it is that notion of coming to understand how our ego has bled into interfering with our spiritual work by saying, no, come back here. Don't go out there with all that, hocus pocus and what have you. Frank Zappa had a wonderful line in one of his songs. He says, hey there, brother, don't you jive me with your cosmic debris. And that's, and small ego is going to say, no. I'm really in charge here. Don't follow that because that's, oh, you can't prove it. And, it's just hocus pocus stuff. That, that you have to assert yourself in your surroundings rather than you have to learn how to be in the midst of your surroundings with great patience and openness, curiosity and wonder and compassion. How do I participate in the dance? How do I participate in ways that allow me to go beyond what small ego only wants us to perceive? And it's not necessarily an intellectual thing. It's a very, very deep kind of experience to go to a place and just say, I am in the midst of being. My being is an expression of the being. The being is an expression of my being. It doesn't mean that we're gods. It doesn't mean that we're any of that kind of stuff, because we're not. We're human. And sometimes, it gets misinterpreted. Oh, that means you must think you're a god. Hardly. I wouldn't want that job anyhow. So it isn't a matter of thinking that we're divine in kind of a way that feeds the small ego. But we are divine in the sense that we are intimately connected to what is continually being expressed all throughout creation. That we are far more than just bones and blood and flesh and organs and what have you. This in and of itself, this whole thing that we call our body, our physical self, is an amazing miracle in and of itself. That that goes really beyond words, but we try to put words to it, and I leave that up to you. I'm not going to tell you what to call um, that from which all has been created, and that uh, to that which it all returns. So that's up to you. And there's many words that we try to call it. But the one thing that we're beginning to learn is what we call it um, diminishes it. It diminishes the being, diminishes God or Bodhisattva or the Tao or Brahman or whatever it might be. um, so just so we understand that, it doesn't mean it's bad, because we do have to communicate as beings. Um, but we can't assume that if I say the Tao or God, that I assume that that is absolutely universally agreed upon by everybody. So when it comes to looking at ego, recognize that it has its place. It's not a place. It's not bad, but it really has no place in our spiritual work. We have to settle below the busyness of all that thinking. I call it the big deal mind. It's creating big deals all the time and what have you, and keeping us all focused on skidding along the surface of existence. Where so many of the great prophets throughout the millennia have always said, it goes below. It's down here. You really have to roll up your sleeves and and do the work. It's not just going to come to you. Um, Carl Sagan said so beautifully that we are an example of the universe being able to think about itself. That's pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable, and to be able to hold that with great reverence. Um, it isn't about the car in our driveway, or the degrees on the wall, or the houses we've built, or the kids we've raised, or the weight we've lost. All that stuff can be fine, but let's not mistake that stuff for our spiritual work. Let's not mistake, going after all that stuff for our deeper spiritual work, and taking the time, as we've talked about in various earlier Zen Times, taking the time to recognize that what we've been caught up in um, comes from a much deeper place, and to really honor that in a way that's very deep and meaningful. And as I said earlier, taking the time in the morning and writing down something, maybe that a dream or a thought or something that you've read or whatever it might be, and work with it. Don't just write it down and scribble some stuff. Uh, just say, I'm coming back to this tomorrow or tonight or later on this afternoon, whenever. Um, and I'm not going to just let this go. So if there was something that you've come across that really resonated and got you to go, really work with it. Don't accept the first thing that comes to your mind. um, just say, okay, that's fine. And where did that thought come from? And then what did that thought, and where did that awareness come from? And how am I understanding this now? And so we can take the time and let the awarenesses of our divine nature come to us. It's not something we think about. It's not something that we analyze or think that it's even a thing. It's a very deep experience of being able to hold yourself in the midst of all that's emerging at every single breath, every single heartbeat, every single eye blink, every single breeze through the trees, every single cloud that goes by, or the laughter of a child, or whatever it might be. It all is just to hold ourselves with a great love and a great reverence of, I'm amidst this dance. I've been invited. Not in an ego, oh, I've been invited, I'm a chosen one. No. It goes much deeper than that. It goes to that humbleness. And and there was a whole aspect of religious spiritual ego that I didn't even touch today that I think we're all very aware of, and that is how the small ego grasps onto righteousness as a way of exalting itself. Um, and that's a whole other topic. But to be able to hold with great reverence and patience that we got invited to this dance. We got invited. How crazy is that? Um, and the ego hates that stuff because it's like, oh, wait a minute here. You're not listening to me. We've got to we've got to reorganize this stuff. This is you know you know crazy talk. Cosmic debris, as Frank Zappa said. Um, and just be able to recognize, okay, yeah, I understand that resistance. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not anything, it's just there. And in the meantime, while this is chattering away, we're dropping deeper and going, and there's more, and it's deeper. So what I'd like you to do is just get comfortable. I want to close up with a meditation here. Close your eyes and relax the shoulders and the neck and the jaw, and just nice deep breath. And allow yourself to come to a sense of awareness. Awareness that allows you to consider that all the stuff you've been taught to think and feel, all the opinions and judgments of your own, of others, ideas, philosophies, theories, whatever it might be, all the things that you've come to define yourself as. And we have them all. I mean, you look at sporting events, who people identify with. I identify with the Packers or the Badgers or the Vikings or the Gophers or whatever. They put their identity into those kinds of things. They put their identity into their gender, into their race, into their socioeconomic, where they got their schooling, their career, what they do, their children, all sorts of things. And that's the stuff of the world. It's there. It's not good or bad. It's just the stuff of the world. Now take a deep breath and follow that out breath with the awareness, with the curiosity of saying, but what's beneath it? What's beneath the stuff of the world? What is there from which the stuff arises? With each out breath, just return with that question. What's beneath the stuff of the world? What is there? And please don't try to find an answer. That's ego operating again. Just sit in spacious openness and allow consciousness to bring forth the wisdom, the knowing beyond what we typically know that we know. And this takes patience to sit quietly, openly, with curiosity and wonder. That the more silent we become, the more we're able to hold ourselves with great care and kindness in the midst. Take a moment to reflect. Did something emerge? May not have. It may have. Just notice. And take the time to write down in your journals to bring an awareness to that level of gratitude for our being, gratitude for having been invited to the dance. So, again, if there were things that interested you, resonated, got you to kind of go, work with them. Don't just write it down once and some nifty little things. Really work with it, and see where it takes you. Before we end, I want to remind people that, as I said, I had decided that after every 5 Zen Times, I would do one extra one. It would be the week after. And this one I set aside an hour for. I'm going to do it with Zoom this time. It didn't work so well with Facebook last time, but I want to give you a heads up for you to really start thinking. For those of you who want to participate, you can participate at any level. You can have your face on or not on. You can have, you can say something, not say something, ask questions, whatever. So if there's some things you would like to explore more deeply, or a topic that you'd like to explore, think about that. And you don't have to do it right away, right now, but you will need to send me your email addresses so that I can send you the link to the Zoom, so that we can share our thoughts and ideas and ask questions. And again, with every single Zen Times, feel free to post your responses or your questions, your struggles, or what have you. I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Or you can just simply message me on the Zen Times site. There's a little message me button for anything that you would like to know more about. And as I always will, I will be posting regularly things of interest for you to consider, to journal, to write about, whatever is going to be helpful. And I will also begin to place on the Zen Times site a topic that I would really like you to really write or journal about. And then I'll begin to, talk about what we're going to come up with for the next one. I have a fairly interesting idea that I want to kind of tease out here. So stay tuned, and thank you for joining in. And as I say, as always, bring a friend or tell a friend about this as we all continue on our journeys. So be well, be safe, um, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you. I'll stay online for a bit if people have questions or reactions or things that they would like. You're welcome. Well, that's a good question, Lisa. I got a question whether I incorporate anything from my workbook. That not yet, not yet, but that is definitely something that I'm looking at doing. Um, so, but that's a very good question. Thanks for asking. You're welcome. Late is okay. Just got a phone call on that one. You never know what's going to come through. For those of you who did join late, and that's perfectly all right, you can watch the whole thing just by going to the Zen Times site. And this one was Zen Times 8. The ego is lonely. Um, so if you miss some of it or what have you, it will continue to be there for you. Okay. Well, I'm going to sign off now again. If you have questions, comments, inquiries, struggles, feel free to also message me through the Zen Time site. I'd be happy to uh, answer any ones that you have. So please do have a great evening, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.